out words to you and say what's more important, like honesty or getting the job done. That should have been my first inkling. I noticed this place was filthy. And the next day they had a visit from the CEO himself, because they spend a ton of money on training and really just want to make sure that you're not just going to the next company to give away all of their secrets. There ain't no secrets to give away. And I just remember being like, what? How is this okay? And then I remember just being like, this is bad. I told people I didn't think I was being properly trained, but they assured me that the person who I was working with was the top of the company, and she was most certainly training me. It was probably just not what I was used to. The first day, the city was there on a cockroach complaint, but there was no real cockroaches. The residents were putting fake cockroaches around the building and calling the city so that they were basically bullying us to get out of there. It was nuts. Like, this place is infested with cockroaches, and I'm like, actually I spent like 4 hours this morning with the city, and I took the fake cockroach out and I threw it in front of her. And then the property manager heard my phone call, and she called him and said, we're taking you to collections. If you don't move in on this day, you're gonna go to collections. So I wish I could, but I'm being recorded, so I can't. Oh, I did not shake that. Oh, girl. Much better. Okay, I'm not gonna lie, I'm kind of nervous about this video. I'm excited to film it. Space. We're back. What was I saying? Oh, if you're looking or you're in retail, I highly recommend Sephora for a job. I loved being a manager there. I loved what that company stood for. I just no longer wanted to be in retail. I'd worked retail my entire life. And I just wanted an out. So I decided during that time, they had offered me a transfer to Dallas, but I decided at that time I was going to look for other jobs. I thought even better of a chance to kind of take it easy. I had had a very rough first trimester, but I was actively looking for jobs in Dallas. So I think it was like probably the end of, I moved in the beginning of September, and I was actively looking for jobs. I'd done a couple interviews, but then I found this job, and it was in property management. I was like, that sounds super awesome. Like, it wasn't weekends, which they lied, it was weekends. And it was really close to home. And yeah, so I found out about that job probably in November. Yeah. So I kind of just like took it easy, couldn't probably get off the couch for most of my first trimester. Or at least the first like 2 months of my first trimester. Anyways, find this job in November and start interviewing. They have a total of, I want to say 6 to 8 interviews. I had interviews over the phone. I had Skype interviews. I had this random interview, which I think other companies do, where they just like spit out words to you and say what's more important, like honesty or getting the job done. That should have been my first inkling. They don't tell you how you do on anything, but basically, yeah, it was a 6-week process, or yeah, it was probably a 6-week process, honestly, of an interview pretty much every single week. And it was all upper management, people who didn't work on the ground. So, should have been an inkling, right? Anyways, I really enjoyed it. I was working with the recruiter for the company, and yeah, it was really good. And I was like, 6 interviews, wow, they obviously want to find the right person, and that's important to me. So literally the day before I went to Japan, or 2 days before I went to Japan for my 30th birthday, which was like on the 6th. I think we left on the 6th. So right at the beginning of December, I found out that I got the job. And they paid well. They increased from what they said they were going to originally pay. It wasn't obviously as good as my salary in California, but I was leaving, going to a completely different company, a completely different field, and I knew the job was also sales-based, so there was a huge opportunity for commission. But overall, I was happy with the salary, very happy with the salary. And so I took the job, negotiated the salary, got what I wanted, took the job. During that time, I did not tell anyone I was pregnant legally. You don't have to. Really glad that I didn't. Nonetheless, wasn't a big deal when people found out. Anyways, they can't legally make it a big deal, right? I also got the wrong concealer color, so it's like my same color instead of being lighter, but whatever, it is what it is. Okay, so get the job. The last interview is a whole day in the field, 8 hours in the field at this job. And yeah, which I was like, awesome. I can kind of really see what a job looks like, yada, yada, yada. So I get there, and first of all, I was the first one there. And the person I was supposed to be training with, the trainer, the regional trainer, was not there yet. And when she did come in, it was very clear that she was very stressed. She was not answering my phone calls to let me in because, like, I didn't want to be late. And yeah, it's first impression, right? And so she was not answering my phone calls, and I was like, okay. So I called the actual property, and somebody or nobody answered. And then finally someone came up to the door and like completely like ignored me and just like opened the door. And I remember just being like, this is freaking weird. But I was like, okay, whatever. So I go in and she's like, what are you here for? And I was like, oh, this is like my day in the field. And she's like, oh, no one told me. And I was like, oh, okay. And I was like, I don't know. I'm supposed to be waiting for this person. She's like, oh yeah, she's not gonna be here. And I was like, okay. But then she ended up showing up. So I'm just like sitting there watching this girl do her thing, you know, clearly just not interested in telling me much about anything. And so finally the girl shows up, and you know, I'm just watching them like do their thing. And you know, honestly, I was impressed with how the like structure of the day went. Like they set expectations and did like a daily meeting thing, and like, you know, really like talked it up, whatever. And I was like, oh, this is really cool. Like I was used to doing like what was called a 5-minute meeting in the morning at Sephora, like getting everyone hyped, telling everyone what their goals are for the day, and yada, yada, yada. And then, so I was like, okay, this is very similar. I love this atmosphere. And then, there were a couple of red flags though, I'm not gonna lie. So for me, how someone keeps their desk, like in terms of organization, but also cleanliness, like do you have dust on your phone, on your desk? Like, is there paper clips all over the floor? Like, that is huge to me. Why? Not because I know some people aren't organized, and that's fine, but cleanliness shows, I think, a sense of respect for your space. And I believe that. I'm very big on that. And I always, one of my managers from back at Abercrombie said, you can always tell the level of respect that the employees have for the store, as well as for their leadership, by how they keep their like locker space, their space where they keep their bags and their clothes and all that kind of stuff. Sorry, the door. And it registered for me because I could definitely tell a trend where if the management was good and they were motivating their team and the team was cohesive and everything, their locker space just was cleaner. And I remember just being like, it's the small things, but they really do make a big difference. So I noticed this place was filthy. And the next day they had a visit from the CEO himself. And I remember just being like, are y'all getting professional cleaners? Because this place looks disgusting. And I remember them like cleaning throughout the day or whatever. And like, I was just helping because I was like, this is disgusting. Okay. So yada yada, all that goes on. I'm kind of like, there are red flags with the ladies' energy, but I was like, you know what? It is what it is. Not everyone is you're gonna jive with. So after all of that, I'm like meeting with the regional trainer, and then my who was going to be my boss, I was able to meet with him. And he actually worked for Abercrombie in his career as well. So I felt like, wow, okay, he can really give me honestly, like, is this going to be, you know, a good fit for me? Because I liked that structure and all of that, and we were able to talk about that. And he was still in training, like brand new as well. But he was telling me like, yes, I feel like a lot of my, he was a district manager, but he started the same way I did. He said, a lot of my skills I feel like are able to be transferred over and yada, yada, yada. And he was very honest with me and talked about, you know, from his training experience already, like this is a company that's still new and needs a lot of help with their training program. And so I was like, okay, like if I know that, like that was my whole thing. I was in training for all the companies I work for. But anyways, and so Scott be slamming doors down there. So I was like, okay, well, I can work with that. But I left on the note of like spending time with him, and I really felt like, okay, like this is somebody who would be my boss. I really enjoy him. I think he's upfront. I feel like he's realistic. I just liked him. So left the day and being like, okay, it's crazy. But I kept thinking like, okay, but I could help instill daily habits to make sure the cleanliness and you know, inspire people to understand the reasoning behind why a dirty desk and everything is a huge perception to the customer. Okay, nonetheless, and our whole thing was we're customer service based. So I should also mention most apartment complexes are owned by different people than they're managed. So the owners, the investors, hire a management company to run it. So they're two different people, okay? We did both. So we were bottom line focused on price, lowering costs of running the business, increasing revenue like no other. That was our main goal, which honestly wasn't fully conveyed to me at the time. Not a big deal though. I have no problem. Like, I think that's really awesome to understand the business in that sense, because if you ever run a business, that's your goal, right? Lower costs, raise profits. That's that's how you make money, right? But anyways, so left feeling like, okay, you know, it is what it is. I'll find out later if I got the job. But overall, like I had a feeling, but I had always been one of those people that's like, a job is a job, but who you work for really is huge. And I really enjoyed my time with who was going to be my boss. So I was like, okay, I would take the job if they offered it to me. So they offered me the job, and my first day on the job was in McKinney, and it was at a different property than I had originally trained at. And I was starting with someone else who, well, I was actually supposed to start with two other people, and one of them didn't show up. So that should have been another red flag. So I get to the place. It's a brand new place. Again, same thing happens to me. No one's there, and I'm just waiting, and I'm calling her, and I'm like, anyway. And so then they finally let me in, whatever. I get in. I'm filling out packets and packets of paperwork, which I fully understand, get, whatever. There are a couple things that alarm me, and I bring them up to the regional trainer, who is, or that door is gonna be the death of him, who is like in and out, crazy, not really actually answering any of our questions, spending any time with us at that point. So I was like, this is really weird. And I'm reading through this packet, and there's like so much like non-compete, ability to take money out of your paycheck. The one that stuck out to me the biggest is the non-competes were intense, which, okay, I get, whatever. They said it's because they spend a ton of money on training and really just want to make sure that you're not just going to the next company to give away all of their secrets. There are no secrets to give away. And so, what was I gonna say? I don't know, my brain. The last one that really like stuck out to me, and I did not sign until I spoke to someone, and I shouldn't have signed anyways, but it is what it is, because it didn't end up coming back at me. But it kind of did, because they didn't give me my last paycheck, which is kind of a big deal, but I wasn't gonna fight it. So, they had said in this paperwork that if you quit within 1 year, which I did, you are to pay back all of your training, all of the money that it took to train you. And I'm like, well, that's so generic. What does that mean? I've signed contracts before. I signed a contract with Abercrombie that said if you leave within the 2-year contract, you owe $30,000 for X, Y, and Z. You have to give a number. You can't just say, like, do I have to pay back my trainer's fees? Do I have to pay back all the equipment that you gave me? Do I have to pay back my salary, my overtime? Like, what does that mean? And she kept being like, why are you trying to quit before you even start? And I'm like, you are not answering my question. Like, what in the world? Why? I've worked for other companies. This is ridiculous. And it was a very alarming thing. And then while we're signing all this paperwork, this is just after Christmas. This is January 6th is when I started. So I start, and they had just taken over this property the week before Christmas. Why would you take over a property a week before Christmas? I don't know. Sounds like a crazy mess. And they had people coming in, like residents, screaming because they owed late fees. We would charge $100 for every day you did not pay. Well, these people paid through the old company. They were no longer, because we had taken over, they were only taking paper checks. Well, half of these people are out of town for Christmas, right? Visiting friends, visiting family, whatever the case may be. They weren't in town. They didn't know that there was gonna be this takeover. There was no proper like awareness, and they didn't care. They literally were like, sorry, you owe the $100 for every day you're late. And these people were 6 days late on their rent and getting eviction notices. And I'm just like, I remember just being like, this is customers. Shouldn't you let the first late fee just like, you know, like, how is this a good way to be like, you know, we're taking over. Like, I understand there was a little bit of confusion. Just going forward, this is our policy. Like, thank you for understanding. Sorry for all the craziness. No. I was hearing people being like, sorry, you didn't pay your rent. You owe the money. If you don't do it, you're evicted. And I just remember being like, what? How is this okay? And I'm sitting next to the guy who's also signing his paperwork, and we're just like, I feel like we should be doing something, because they're running in and out, and there's hundreds of people in the lobby like screaming and screaming and like yelling and all of this. And I remember just being like, oh my God. And at the end of the day, we like walked the property and saw different units or whatever. We were like, they wanted to get us out of the office, obviously, probably not to like, you know, torture us. But at that point we had already accepted the freaking offer. So here we are screwed. And so, anyways, at the end of the day, they're like, oh, this happens at every new takeover. Like, it's completely normal. And I remember just being like, thinking to myself, okay, I opened new stores. Like, I get that. You have a team, a system, something in place for these sort of things that happen, like a takeover, right? Because we are not in the business of property management. We're in the business of taking a property, like lowering rent or lowering prices, raising rent, and then turning around and selling it, flipping it for a profit. So I remember being like, so what you're telling me is the only time that it's actually smooth is when we're about to like in between, right? Not when we take over the property, and like right before we sell it is probably crazy, right? Which I've heard. We only own a property for average of 2 years. So I'm like, what? Like, how have we not come up with a system to alleviate some of these stressors that we're doing when we've been in business for this long? That was like, to me, I was like, what? Why do we not have people supporting? Why do we not have more people on staff? Why do we not have emails going out to these residents beforehand? Like, why is this such a shit show? Like, why? And I just remember being like, and people are okay with it and accepting it. And then I remember just being like, this is bad. Okay? And so, yeah. Anyways, I'm just like, all right, well, I'm in it now, so we're just gonna make the best of it. How can I put on my hat of like, how can I make this better? How can I make sure this doesn't happen, right? And so, yeah, whatever. I realized I was not gonna be at that property, so I was like, thank freaking heavens, even though it was beautiful. It was a mess because they were just, it was a mess. And then I got put back at the original property that I interviewed at, which, to be honest, I didn't really get along, or have a good, not get along. I didn't have a great first impression of the current property manager who was supposed to be training me, who was never trained me. So that was fun. No one ever checked to see if I was being trained either. I told people I didn't think I was being properly trained, but they assured me that the person who I was working with was the top of the company, and she was most certainly training me. It was probably just not what I was used to. Granted, my boss, who wasn't like fully in place yet, so I wasn't reporting to him at that point. Okay. So I finally tell them, you know, I'm pregnant, obviously. This is when I'm gonna need to go on maternity leave. So I call HR, fully expecting that I'm not going to get any benefits because this was, you know, obviously I knew I was pregnant before I got the job. So she tells me when I'm on the call, okay, well, this is a pre-existing condition. And I was like, pregnancy is a pre-existing condition. Cool, got it. Yes. Not congratulations, that's so exciting. Yeah, what time, blah, 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 blah. She then tells me I'm not guaranteed my job when I get back because I didn't tell anyone before it happened, which I was like, okay. But there's actually, I should mind you, there's really not an HR team. There's one lady who does all HR. So, okay. So, yeah, that was my interacting with her. Went to my boss and said, okay, so I'm not sure if I have a job when I get back, so I guess I'll just like let you know when I'm like ready to come back and da-da-da. And he was like, don't stress, it's not a big deal. I will guarantee that you have a job when you come back. And I was like, okay, cool, good to know. And so I go out in April, the end of, or hold on, right at the beginning of April. It took about a week and a half before I gave birth because I was just like, it was a lot. So was out all of April, May, June, and then July, as I'm out, my boss was kind of like communicating with me. We just bought this new property in Uptown Dallas. You're going to love it. It is top, high-end, beautiful, and I want you to be property manager. And I'm like, well, cool. I don't have to work with that girl anymore who didn't train me. But also like, what the hell? Like, I am not trained in order to like, you know, I only worked there for like 4 months, but not really because, or 3 months, but not really because I was not actually, I was like a leasing agent for the first 2 months to like learn that job first. Anyways, I was not equipped to be a property manager. And I tried telling him that. And he was like, it's fine. I'm gonna put somebody else there as well so y'all can like learn together, and you know, the regional trainer's gonna be there and it's gonna be fine. And I'm like, okay, cool. And he's like, but you're gonna love it. It's beautiful, yada, yada, yada. I'm like, okay, awesome. This is so cool. This is good news. I'm super excited. Go back, hit the ground running, you know, all the things. No, it was bad. I get there and I'm, you know, the other girl, loved her. She's awesome. She's brand new as well. The whole staff is new. No one knows what the heck they're doing. These people are livid. The first day, the city was there on a cockroach complaint, but it was no real cockroaches. The residents were putting fake cockroaches around the building and calling the city so that they were basically bullying us to get out of there. It was nuts. I was having conversations with residents who were very upset. It was my first day back. I was like, obviously still emotional, postpartum, all that stuff, you know? And this lady is like literally screaming at me, and I'm sitting at the desk like, yeah, totally understand. And then I take the fake cockroach out because she's like, this place is infested with cockroaches. And I'm like, actually, I spent like 4 hours this morning with the city. And I took the fake cockroach out and I threw it in front of her and I said, ma'am, these are the only cockroaches that we have in the building. And unfortunately for you, they're not real. So I think we're okay. And I remember her just being like, what? Are you accusing me of putting, and I'm like, ma'am, I'm not accusing you. I'm simply just telling you what I realized this morning. And so it was madness. Everything was madness. They had a wine group at their thing and they would just talk crap and be mean and come up with ways on how to get rid of us, and we just weren't going anywhere. Anyways, the whole situation was absolutely awful. Like I said, our goal is to come in, take over a building, lower costs. And by lower costs, I mean like everything is gone, but we're still charging double for what it was. For instance, most apartment complexes, valet trash, right? You can't get rid of it. They're contracted, so you can't pick by unit. Maybe you can, not everybody can, right? Okay, valet trash is a super common way to increase the cost for the apartment complex, but it's normally contracted out to valet trash, the company. So, and on average, it's anywhere, depending on where you live, $10 to $35 a month. It can be more, obviously. It can be less, probably. Okay, so we have valet trash, right? We get rid of valet trash. That's the first thing we do, and we internalize it. But when you renew your lease, the trash charge goes from $35 for an external company to $75. $75 for trash. And we don't pay anybody anymore. And if you think you do the math on that of 300 units, it's insane. And we hide it so far into the contract that you don't even realize it, right? And yeah, it's just little things like that. It's little things like just all the fine print. I highly, highly encourage you to follow or really read the fine print. I have mascara all over my face. Read the fine print. Read it, okay? Anyways, so that was, I didn't even tell you the real like kicker. So anyways, that is just an example of, I felt like a test of my ethics because I had to tell people, you know, that we're raising the trash charges and this is what your fees are. And I remember just people being like, do you even think that's realistic? And I remember being like, right? You know, those sort of things. But my first lease that I had ever signed as a leasing agent was to like a 19-year-old boy. He had just gotten a new job and, you know, looking for an apartment from like Puerto Rico or something. And so I sign him, everything is great. And then he starts doing the math and realizing like he's not gonna be able to afford it. He just does math, talks to his aunt, realizes he's not gonna be able to afford it. He already signed the lease. So I'm like, shit. So I kept telling him, you can, I'll help you with finding, you know, like the best cable and, you know, internet people so that you don't have to pay that much and yada, yada, yada. When in fact, that was a lie that I found out, is that we are contracted with them and it's more expensive and then you get a kickback from them. So that's why you represent them. And I'm just like, well, that's a lie. And I felt terrible. Obviously, I'm not gonna recommend that to him because he's 19 years old. Like, what the heck, guys? And so it's all about taking advantage of people. So anyways, he likes like, I can't move in. I'm not gonna be able to afford it, Kelly. I'm straight up telling you I'm not gonna be able to afford it. And I'm like, okay. So I go, even though we have a signed contract, which in reality, like, you know, we can hold that up. But there are also like that fine print of like, well, if you never actually move in and never take ownership of the keys, then you never fulfilled the contract. Anyways, I go and tell the property manager of that apartment after I've like tried to work through it with him, yada, yada, yada. And she goes, okay, tell him we're sending him to collections. And I remember just being like, what? Like, we're just gonna put this kid who was, you know, is gonna be $15,000 is going to collections because he can't pay his, I remember just being like, oh my God. And she was just like that. And I was just like, oh my God, can you tell me how I have that conversation? Because I'm just gonna tell a 19-year-old kid that, you know, whatever. And then his uncle starts calling me and telling me all this because I kept just being like to the kid, hey, like, you do realize like you signed a contract and technically you can't get out of a contract. Is there anything else that you can do? Is there anyone who's willing to help you with it? Can we put you into a different apartment that's a little more affordable? And he's just like, Kelly, I can't do it. Like, I have a really bad feeling now. And then the property manager heard my phone call and she called him and said, we're taking you to collections. If you don't move in on this day, you're gonna go to collections. So you don't want that to happen to your credit, da 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 da, you're young. And I remember just being like mortified. There goes my relationship with this kid who moves in, and I don't want him to move in obviously now because he can't afford it, so he can't, like, it was terrible, okay? It was terrible. I feel like I kind of like skipped ahead. So we're gonna go one more other horrifying story, which is, the fact that we had a strict phone script that we had to follow, okay? Had to be followed, could not veer from said phone call. The phone call entailed that you are not allowed to tell them the price of a unit. What does everyone say when they call, right? What are your, hi, thank you for calling, yeah, how can I help you? What is your price for a 1-bedroom apartment? What's your availability look like for this date? Oh, perfect. We're not allowed to say price. So we skate all around that, tell them the 30-second, they're just like a whole thing. And then they're like, so can you tell me the price? And we're like, unfortunately, or why don't you just come in? Can you come in today? We'll tell you all about it. I want you to see the place, da da da. And they're like, well, I just need to know if it's within my budget because we also didn't put prices online. And I remember just being like, you know, a reasonable question to ask, right? But no, not for us. We had to avoid the price question 3 times. And at that time, people are like, well, screw you. I'd get hung up on. I would get like, are you stupid? Like, why are you not answering my question? And I remember just being like, I wish I could, but I'm being recorded, so I can't. And okay, then I get this one call And my boss and the regional, or not my boss, the regional trainer and the property manager of that property were in the other room listening to this conversation. I get this call, and it's a gentleman, and he says, I'm looking for an apartment. And I said, okay, cool. And he said, so I tell him all about yada yada, what do we have to offer, da da da. And he goes, well, I'm a convicted felon. And I'm like, he's like, do you accept convicted felons? And little known fact, not a lot of apartment complexes do, obviously, right? And I'm like, you know, everything is case by case scenario. Let's get you in for a tour, da da da. He's like, ma'am, I am a convicted felon. I have armed robbery on my record. I have molestation on my record. Are you going to let me in? And I just remember being like, you know, sir, everything is case by case. Why don't we just come on in? And he's like, why are you wasting my time? You're a moron, da 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 da. Like, and I just tried to be positive. And he's just like, are you stupid? Like, why are you not answering my question? Do you accept it or don't you? Like, do you not understand what kind of man I am? And I'm like, the last thing I want to do is have you come in that door and see my face. I can tell you that, but I'm not allowed to say that. So I put him on hold, and I like went to them and I was like, what do I do? And they're like, just get him in the door, get him in for a tour. And then I was like, okay, scared out of my mind, you know? And then he's like, okay, well, I'll come in at da da da. And thankfully he never shut up. But they then take it as a learning experience and try to re-listen to the phone call, because everything was recorded, and grade me and tell me what I didn't do right. And I didn't follow the script. So that's why he didn't come in. And I didn't, or if he didn't lease, it was because I didn't follow the script. Or if he did lease, it wasn't based off your skills, it was and you didn't do a good phone lead, it was because he just needed the apartment and you did nothing for it. And I just remember being like, okay, cool. So we're robots. We have to say exactly what it is and nothing outside of that. They didn't say everything. That was the reason why we failed. And if they came in, set the tour, da 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 da, everything went great on the phone script, and they didn't lease, it's because you suck. I don't know. It was basically just a terrible tactic of making people feel like crap and really not giving them any sort of like human ability to sell. And I get a script, I understand it, but if you didn't say the exact words verbatim, then you were like, that's the reason that you suck. And life's not that easy. It's not that cut and dry, but nonetheless, it was a Friday when was it Friday? Yeah, it was a Friday when my partner, who I had been working with, got fired. And then that Saturday, I get a call from my boss, and I was supposed to go in that morning because yes, I actually had to work weekends even though they said I didn't, saying that he was fired. And then right after that, got a call from like the head of training who had spent some time with me, not the regional one who I had previously talked about. And she was like, you know, I know that you just found out that that so-and-so got fired. How does that make you feel? And I'm like, this is not gonna work out for me. Like, I'm just being honest with you. And she's like, you have so much potential, da da da. And I'm like, this is not the right company for me for so many reasons. And I remember her just being like, that's your opinion. And I just was like, you're right. So it was great. Thank you for reaching out to me. I appreciate it, but I'm not going to be working for the company anymore. That was on a Saturday. My mom passed away on the following. So I made the decision to quit my job on that Saturday, told my mom, and on that following Thursday, we got the news that she passed away. So it was honestly probably the best, because I probably would have gotten fired or quit because I didn't have the ability to like go home and spend time with my family and friends. So it all worked out, but overall, those red flags and the whole thing, I guess the reason behind this video is like red flags, pay attention to them. Small things, though they may seem small, are not small. The cleanliness of a place, all of that means more than you think it does. How you're treated during a job and your level of stress for knowledge that you just don't know is not okay. When you're starting a new job, you should have this sort of feeling of being, you know, able to make mistakes in a learning environment and learn from them and correct, but not feel like criticized or belittled or looked down upon, because it's not okay to do that to anybody. And upper management really did that, and I learned very quickly about how just many silly rules there were, like a certain word that you could not say in the presence of upper management. Like, I just remember being like, that's what's important at the end of the day, is not using a specific word, but the cleanliness of our apartments, it was a lot. That's pretty much it. It was a very long, rambly story time, sort of why it was the worst job of my entire life, because it really made me just feel like I was being a scummy person. And I, would avoid it at all costs. And honestly, I was telling people in my previous, like my last apartment that I worked at, like people that I liked and that I had built a relationship with, and they were like, should we renew? We love it here. And I'm honestly like, run for the hills. This place is going down. And because I literally could not sleep at night knowing that I had done some of those things. And you should never work for a job that's like that. There's just no reason. So anyway, I want to say thank you to all of you who watch my videos, and support me in ways that make this possible for me to, make YouTube my full-time job. I can't thank you all enough for the love and support. So yeah, I love you guys. Thank you for listening to my super rambly, crazy job experience. If you like these sort of videos and you want to see more story times, I've got plenty of others. Let me know. Sorry this video was kind of rambly and all over the place, but that's just me. I love you guys so much, and I'll see you all in my next video.